This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Going to then solve by coming together, and that those needed to be implemented fully. And looking at the 7th of March, one of those is integrity when it comes to public spending and the issue around opulence. And we're going to go into that conversation this morning and talk about, wasteful spending and whether that has been reduced significantly or if we're seeing inroads into that. Tony Gachoka is the kind of spokesperson, and he joins us this morning. Tony, good morning.
Good morning. I'm happy to be back at Spices FM.
Karibu sana.
The last time I was here, you were cornering me about whether or not we are part of the Kasongo government. I could see your eyes change. When I came, you asked me, where are you and where is Gideon Moy? So here I am.
Okay. Well,
and good morning.
Now we won't do it in the corner, we'll do it in the open. So, of course, before we get into our conversation for this morning, Dennis is going to share today's proverb.
So today we're in Cameroon, a country of 28 million people rich in oil. They have cocoa, they have tea, they have timber, and a country that is equally known for football. You talk about Roger Miller and Eto'o, and indomitable lions comes to mind. But the problem that we get from Cameroon today, even the strongest tree bends when the wind is strong.
Wonderful. This is the same proverb the Chinese say the other way around. It is not the size of the wave, but the motion of the ocean that moves the ship.
Yes.
I think this is about actually looking beyond what you see. And the force can actually be dual. You can actually have two forces coming from one image. When you look at the parable of the waves and the sea. A lot of people think, if you're on the highest wave, then you're moving. But actually, it is how the rhythm of the ocean moves that moves the ship. Yeah, it means to me, actually, that the momentum of any mass force is given by forces other than one. It could be gravity, could be wind. It could be, I think, even the weight of the vessel on it, for example, in the case of the open sea. So I suppose it just means keep your eyes wide open to the bigger thing, and from it you will get more than looking at the smaller part. Small parts can be diversions.
True.
Indeed. So the 10-point agenda coming to a head in a few days, actually, and one of those is cutting public waste, the opulence that we see, then being able to say, let's reduce that significantly. Would you say that there are inroads being made into cutting public debt, not just debt, but public spending, the wastage that we see at the expense of some critical issues that actually should be catered for?
I think it's important to tell Kenyans from the beginning that the 10-point agenda signed by the late Raila Odinga and President William Ruto was more optics than substance. It was more optics than substance because if you go into the first question that you're asking, you have to first of all ask what is the role of government, because there are two vehicles upon which any 10-point agenda can be achieved. One of them is the executive, which is to lead by policy, and the other one is the executive. Now, both the combined numbers of the Kenya Kwanza government and the Raila Odinga-led ODM were enough to pull any numbers they needed from the Senate and from the House. And therefore, any policy coming from State House would easily pass. And if you've seen, for example, the appointment of individuals to any cabinet position, a government becoming very strong on the appointment of an IG of police, all these things are seamless because what State House wants, State House gets. So any flaw you're seeing in the implementation of any of the 10-point agenda shows lack of political will, not lack of political numbers.
Oh, Tony.
And therefore, it was just a con of taking a picture with the late Odinga in order to calm the country down from the Gen Z uprising. And since then, ODM themselves are the ones who shouted the most, demanding the 10-point agenda, of which they were signatories. So I think actually it does the country a disservice to continue talking about this 10 agenda. We should be talking how beautiful the picture was that they took between the two, the late Raila Odinga and William Ruto. There was nothing more than a photo opportunity. There was no political substance to discuss. And I can go further to say, if you look at even the issue of violence on young people, on demonstrations, I mean, Odinga's own party which is having internal discussions, is being attacked by the same police for whom they are meant to be signatories about a better, peaceful way of handling individuals, and where they said no other Kenyan would die. In fact, compensation was on the table. So I think it is better to call this out as it is. It was a political fraud. It was a political game. It was a game that actually, was caught up because Baba died too soon. Had Baba lived, I think Ruto thought that the optics were enough to carry him across.
So when we talk about the 10-point agenda, especially when we talk about cutting public waste, because I remember at the time, especially the 2024 Gen Z protests that saw the finance bill returned back to Parliament, the president did not assent to that. And some of the things the president said in his speech was that they were going to cut down on spending, that we have to tighten our belts. Each and every single person will have to look at how they will work with the budgets that they would be having at the time. But you just look at what happened a few months later, and we were back to giving 40 million shillings in this church, having meetings that have not been planned for, giving promises that have not been budgeted for. And you talk about a political game that was just happening at the time. And one asked the question, as these two leaders sat down and came up with a 10-point agenda, there was no intention whatsoever to do the things that they
just
promised.
Yesterday in the Houses of Parliament, you had the Attorney General going head-to-head with the Secretary of the Treasury, John Bundy, where she is completely disagreeing on the priorities of government, because it is the duty of the controller of budget to create a budget which the government then looks at together with the Treasury, to present it to Parliament, the Auditor General, then to follow through. But here you've got a government talking about state lodges and how many billions they want to put in, and the sale of state corporations. And here's an Auditor General asking, hold on, if we sell this, then what do we have tomorrow? Saying, if you spend this, how is this going to be in conformity with the budgets we have set? And this is some of the problems that have happened, because William Ruto has come up with something called the infrastructure bond. The infrastructure bond is meant to be a runaway corruption scheme, because it will not have the rail guards of Parliament and the rail guards of the three institutional offices, including the controller of budget and the Auditor General. So all of a sudden you start this fund, accountable only to his cabinet, raised in a manner in which Parliament is not involved, and therefore Parliament cannot oversight. And then that fund is raised in the name of the Kenyan people, and spent in a manner in which it can never be accounted for. Moving away from that, just look at the scandals we've had in the last 3 years. You can start all the way from the maize scandal. You can come back all to the issue of Talanta, which was on the other day. Go back to Shif or Shah. You go back into the issue of Adani and Ketraco and the Jomo Kenyatta Airport. And I'm happy to say that yesterday at the High Court, the Adani case was formally cancelled by the government, bringing a letter, although I have still refused to withdraw the case until such a time when the government commits that Adani cannot come back here. But yesterday has taken a year and a half to shut down the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. And before that, Talanta is on the table. And before Talanta is on the table, we are still dealing with 11 billion stolen from Shah. And all these issues are coming because there is no accountability about funds. So when you talk about the 10-point agenda, it was not just an issue of money or reducing money, but checks and balances on how that money would be reduced. So the fact that you can have an open conflict between the Attorney General and the Minister for Finance in open public at Parliament shows you that there is something disjointed, and there is something very wrong in the running of the public purse. And that is why I'm saying that the 10-point agenda, anniversary or not, was actually a political agenda of rescuing UDA and creating the broad-based government for Ruto to create a machine for re-election in 2027. Let us not call it an economic, or let's not even call it a 10-point agenda. Let us call it a diversion.
Okay, it's interesting that you say that, because even with the 10 points, it brought out specific issues that when you look at it, it seems to be those are that you could call them like the 10 plagues of those, times in Egypt with Moses.
One of those,
10, there were 10 plagues.
One of those agendas was to create a prime minister, to create an
official opposition,
and so on.
Right.
Now,
so
what makes you think that William Ruto wants to share power? Has he given you indication that look, if I promise you're going to be a prime minister and you wait for 5 years, which never happens, I contain you. William Ruto has no appetite to share power, but to consolidate power.
So my question would be here, Tony, that there seem to be issues that people are aware plague Kenya. Plague. That's why he said plagues. They are aware that these issues plague Kenya, and that's why, whether people agreed, whether they didn't agree, whether others signed it or were forced to sign it, that there is the back-end consciousness that there are these issues in Kenya across board. Look at the 10 points. Full implementation of the NADCO report was now what brings in what you're talking about, official opposition, all of these other things. But then these other 9 agenda are the things that plague Kenya on a daily basis, and that we are talking about today. Waste of public funds. It's very clear that there is opulence and that there is wastage of funds across board at the expense of things that are fundamental, crucial to the development of Kenyans. And perhaps it gives people an opportunity, whereas it may have been, according to you, a con and a fraud and just a photo op, that represents a unique opportunity for Kenyans to insist on certain things. In this case, to reduce public waste.
I need to put it to you that in the middle of the Second World War, the world got a major news, the death of Roosevelt. Franklin Roosevelt is dead. It brought chills right from Russia through Europe up to Winston Churchill's Downing Street. And there came Truman, the new president of the US. And when Truman came, he came with a vision different from that of Roosevelt. Many political pundits had written off Truman. But it's under Truman that the United Nations was created. It's under Truman that the final bomb was dropped in Nagasaki and Hiroshima to bring the war to a dead end. I want to tell Kenyans in this program at Spice FM that Mzee Baba Raila Odinga has gone. And many of the things which were done in his name by either this government, his supporters, and even his enemies, all of them have got to go back to the table as Truman went back to the table. This is a Truman era. It is not the era of Raila Odinga. And so I'm telling William Ruto, the 10-point agenda you wrote with Raila Odinga is rested in Bondo. I am telling my friend Edwin Sifuna, the promises and the relationship you had with Mzee Baba Raila Odinga is buried in Siaya. I am telling even his family member, Oburu Odinga and Sister Ruth, Mzee is buried in Bondo. And I'm telling the country as we face the next 2020-27 election, we are going to do it having Mzee buried in Bondo. Can people let this old man rest in peace and stop using his name every day because Raila ran his race, he ran a good race, and he has finished his race. What is ahead of this country now is life beyond Raila. We are in the Truman age, and this country is going to be in a crisis if we continue running backwards. This 10-point agenda was buried with Raila Odinga. There needs to be any new agenda. So let us now, first of all, talk about the Oburu agenda. If there is any agenda, what is the Oburu agenda with UDA? If there is any agenda with Sifuna, what is the Sifuna agenda with Sifuna? If there is an agenda of the united opposition, what is an agenda of that united opposition? The reason I am saying this is that there has been nowhere in history, after a disposal of a big man, whether it be Idi Amin, Kamuzu Banda, whether even Emperor Bokassa in the Central African Republic, when people like those leave for good or for worse, even Mugabe, the country never goes back to what it was before them. So I am saying that there is this idea of revisiting something that is non-existent, because the political deal of a 10-point agenda had only force when it bared the life and signature of Raila Amolo Odinga. In the absence of Raila being behind that signature, it is as good as my brother here signing it.
Yeah, so Tony, this was a political agenda and a political deal
between who?
Between Raila Odinga and William Ruto. One asked the question, was there a Kenyan's agenda in that discussion? Should that be what we're talking about now as we go to 2027? That these are two individuals who came together, signed a pact because President William Ruto was looking at 2027. That today, as we approach 2027 and Raila Odinga not being in the picture, perhaps conversations at the time ought to have been about Kenyans for Kenyans, that we failed at the very point when we said we have a 10-point agenda that wasn't meant to benefit Mwananchi but to benefit the children.
I don't think we're having a conversation. Mwaka moja imeisha. Mwaka moja imeisha before Baba has passed. How many factions are you seeing? You're talking about the 10-point agenda. Me, I'm asking you, what about ODM? Family. His own family. I am talking about members of ODM. Everyone is in disarray. It's not even a year. Now, if the party cannot hold, If the party that you are saying owns the pact in the absence of Baba is not even a party, then what are you talking about? Who is prosecuting this agenda? Is it the Oburu faction?
No, there's an
Is it
implementation
the Junet?
committee. There's an implementation
committee
committee that is chaired,
owned by whom?
owned by the parties.
Yeah. No,
They have a chairperson and they have an entire committee who are going to different government departments, having conversations, coming back to tell us what the public debt looks like, coming back to tell us what the fight against corruption looks like, coming back to tell us how far they've gone to implement the NADCO report. These people exist, Tony. One of them was sitting in the chair where you're sitting
these
today.
things are I find this very interesting because even at the end of the Second World War, Germany was East Germany and West Germany. I mean, there is an aftermath. There is an aftermath of Baba passing. I think you guys are in utopia. I mean, the great Raila Odinga has died, and you guys just think you can put him in the pocket like a wallet. Let me tell you, William Ruto, please, Ruto, your friend is no more. Ruto, this is not going to be easy. You have to go to needle a new political reality. And I'm trying to tell you that the 10-point agenda died with Mzee Baba Amolo Odinga, and there is no such thing as a 10-point agenda. In fact, right now there is survival. By the time Oburu decides whether he's running for deputy president or not, because I can't even understand what he wants to run for, right? And whether he'll have an NDC or not. I mean, these guys can't even decide whether they can meet as a party.
Let's take a few steps back and
So let us be...
Tony, let's try and understand, because you guys are all in this party together, you know, and when I say party, I don't mean a political vehicle. I mean party like sherehe, celebration. Everybody's in the room, all right? How in the first place is it that two political parties came and made a decision about what was going to unite Kenya in the first place? Remember that this all came about as a result of the protests that we saw stemming from June 2024 against the finance bill. Then two parties came together and decided, to an extent, because I listened very closely to Edwin Sifuna when they were at KCC. Yeah. And if you listen to his words, from that moment, you could tell that he was not for this thing, because it was clear, perhaps leading to what you've said this morning. But how is it? It's like the United States. They play basketball and then they decide that it's a world affair because some teams have won where they are. And then it's a World Basketball Federation or Association. How do two parties come and decide that this is what is best for Kenya? And everybody claps and signs. And then we say, okay, now we have a broad-based government.
So all of us had a father we loved very much over periods of time. So Baba was the father of very many people. And as long as Baba was alive, Baba was a father to all. And he could manage the inconsistencies, the ups and the downs of all his children to a manageable level. And that is why alikuwa anaitwa Baba. The moment Baba rested, the moment Baba fell, people began his inheritance. Wanataka kumrithi Baba yao. And as the process of inheriting Baba has continued, it has taken a manifestation of different proportions, including his legacy. Now, part of that legacy are those who are saying he left us with William Ruto in the broad-based government. And to justify why they want to stay, to our skeptical part of ODM, they want to raise up this issue of a 10-point agenda as a kind of the 10 commandments as left by Baba in the mountains of where? Where did the Bible, was it in the mountains of where Moses took the Bible? That is where they are saying there are those 10 commandments. And I'm saying to you, there were never those 10 commandments. Those 10 commandments were an arrangement by Baba and UDA for a temporary political situation. But those who want to make permanent political decisions are using them as a stepping stone.
When people went to the streets, when they went to protest, no political party was in that protest.
Yeah, and that
the people of Kenya did not come and have political parties as their banners during those protests.
What I'm explaining to you, there was no general election. There was a crisis in governance. And in democracies, when there is a crisis for governance, actually talks are normal. We've had talks before with Kofi Annan and Mwai Kibaki that were attended, and I was part of those talks, where Baba and Mwai Kibaki sat down and formed a political cooperation. I have seen talks between Baba and former President Uhuru Kenyatta that formed into a handshake. Talks within presidents have happened in and outside the borders of Kenya. The only point was Baba lived through those agreements to either stay or leave. And I want to make my point and then you can make yours. I am only saying we cannot argue in absentia of Baba about a 10-point agenda that is meaningless in his death. My
point is that you speak about elections and that there was an impasse between two sides, and that's why you had somebody need to come and initiate a peace accord. In this case, this broad-based 10-point agenda all of these shenanigans came as a result of the people of Kenya protesting about all of these things: bad governance, opulence, public waste, funds not going to the right place. It was the people. It was not a political party in the streets. It was not a political party who was championing that people were shot and killed in the streets of Nairobi and other parts of the country. It was the people of Kenya asking for a certain thing. So my question is, how is it that then two parties would come and say, this is what is going to solve that problem?
Unfortunately for Kenyans, the other party, which you call the Baba's party, ODM, had sufficient loyal, fanatical support on the late Prime Minister that his decision to go and salvage the other government was a command that they took. And whether they liked it or not, they swallowed the tablet. And Baba had the stature to make them do so.
Okay.
And that is why he was sought by William Ruto. And what I am saying, to the tragedy of Ruto, that is no longer the same. And when it becomes clearer towards the end of the year that there is no longer Baba, because I think this thing, it was very easy to say, just replace the brother with the brother. It's far from it. I think it's already unfolding. It will get worse. By the time we are hitting December of this year, it will be very clear that Baba is not with us. And that is why I'm dismissing this whole issue of the 10-point agenda, because I'm saying this 10-point agenda has no author. It's like what happened with the civil rights movement when Martin Luther King died. When Martin Luther King Jr. was shot, there was such a drop in the uptake of the civil rights movement that it has never regained its former stature or glory. So Kenya will have to get used to living without Baba. And what is exciting me about the Sifuna group and these young guys who are coming up is that, and I love this whole thing of Mimi ni Sifuna, because I like that than him say Mini Baba. It is important for us to have a new Baba, to have a new Sifuna, to have a new kind of thinking for the next generation. So I'd want to see this rebellion, the heirs of Baba, who among them will be able to take their followers where they will, and then meet the followers of other parties where they will, so that there is a new discussion towards the election of 2027 and a new dispensation, so that we will always be looking back in the rear mirror, saying that yes, there was a Baba, but now there is a new Kenya. I think for me, it is critical for all of us to let Baba rest, and for us to be able to have a Kenya without him, without keep coming back, oh, Baba signed, Baba said. And the reason I'm saying that, we were left in a one-party state by Jomo Kenyatta. And when he could not allow any competition, he left us in a jure one-party state. And it came up to Moi to be able to say, no, let us open Section 2A. We had the old constitution of 1963. In 2010, we have the new constitution and now Moi Kibaki and Raila Odinga. We have now devolution, and we have different accountable systems of government. We have to move on as a nation, and we have to move on beyond the 10-point agenda. So I'm here to tell you, let us bury the 10-point agenda. There is nice land in Uhuru Garden. Somewhere there we can find a patch, we bury it, and we form another agenda now with people who can live and breathe it, people who can be accountable to it. That one died with Raila Odinga.
I hear you speak, Tony, but remember, this agreement that these individuals did have, right? It was between parties. You would want to say ODM is fragmented, but then again, that agreement was between them. Are you saying that we cannot see the achievement of the 10-point agenda despite Raila Odinga not being there?
First of all, there is no party called ODM. ODM is there. So now those
the party chair might say differently.
Like, let me tell you, right now there is UDA. Whoever,
no, because why I say that is because even under what it is they're pushing right now in terms of having discussions through 2027 is from a result of the broad-based arrangement.
Party meetings of ODM are done in State House and are chaired by President William Ruto. There is no party called ODM. What Sifuna and my friends are fighting for are the remnants. Okay, already there is a 23rd of this month, March. They're having an NDC. I just take your live cameras and just watch the ceremony. There will be a ceremony, there will be endorsed, it will be funded by State House, it is owned by State House, it's an extension of UDA. They have declared their presidential candidate, who is William Ruto. They are begging either to be considered for deputy president or anything else, begging. So what are you talking about? I've never seen the ODM of Baba beg for anything. This is not the party that I know. You should see ODM members lining up for money. You know, Marupuru Rupu, things that have never been seen in ODM. This is a disaster. If Raila Amolo Odinga was to wake up and look at his ODM, he would say, I don't understand. I don't believe this is ODM. And if you want to doubt it, go to Kakamega, where everybody in so-called ODM territory is saying one term. So which ODM are you talking about? Then that is why I am telling you that it is time to understand and to agree that this matter has passed on. St. Peter had the hard job when we lost Christ. After the crucifixion, St. Peter had the hard job of making the church and making people believe that in Christ there is a future, and we had to come up with a way of living beyond the death of Christ. If we have survived that as Christians, Tafadhali, let us also let Raila rest in peace. And Raila Odinga is no more. He played a critical role in this country, but people should stop using his name to grow politically. Those who must grow on their own 2 feet. Those people who fall must fall on their sword. And I think if the one who may fall the hardest is one William Ruto, because he over-relied that he can be able to manipulate and take over Baba's party. And what has happened is a big majority of Baba's men and women have left him and have left him dry. And so the future of this country is going to be decided not by Ruto. It will be decided by the people who can emerge from the ashes and the people who can live a life without having to rely on Baba's name, but rely on their convictions and rely on what they can do for the country individually. I'm very, very inspired to see how many of these courageous people are beginning to come out. I noticed the defiance of violence in Kakamega when Sifuna was addressing the security apparatus and saying, today nobody is going to move from here. Today we are ready to die at this place. And he looked them in the eye. And that may be beginning of a way to handle security forces in this country who have become perpetual in teaming up with goons in order to interfere with rallies. And maybe there needed to be that Messiah, young man who has nothing to lose and who says no. And I say no. I saw the same thing happen in Kisii. I was very happy again, where people said no. Matiang'i said no, we are not going to tolerate political thuggery. And if you come, there is a consequence. If this can rise up and become new leaders, then you're talking about Matiang'i. You're talking about Sifuna. You'll have other people to talk about other than just Baba. And that is why I'm raising the alarm now to a man I loved and will always love called Raila Odinga. But as much as I loved him, he is with the Lord. And we must allow him to rest and build a country, and later history will judge whether his legacy was enough to guide our future. But we cannot run the country as though we are running it in his behalf. And every time everybody goes to a press conference, I had Esther Pasari saying yesterday, oh, you know, Edwin Sifuna cannot really love Baba. If he really loved Baba, he would not do that. How does Pasaris know how Sifuna loved Baba or not? I mean, how can she make that the subject of our press conference? Let us say she likes Sifuna as a man or not, whether he can do what he can do or not. But she cannot hold a whole radio program on Baba's spirit. In fact, people have become prophetess. In fact, others are even spiritual leaders or about Baba's soul. Baba said, Baba had promised, Baba whispered, I was with Baba. All these things are, I think, for me, I call them hogwash. Let us look for a Kenya that will respect the life and times of Raila Odinga, as others heroes of this nation like Tom Mboya, Degama Pinto, Jomo Kenyatta, Awins Kodek, Jaramogi Oginga, Wangari Maathai, and many heroes. And Baba is no doubt among the best of the heroes of this nation.
Do you think it exposed some folks who were around what you would then call, you know, these gatherings in terms of what they could offer for leadership? Because if you talk about people now lining up, if you talk about people wanting to just be in the room like a fly on the wall, does it expose them in terms of what they really wanted for leadership?
Yes, there is no doubt that Baba had the magic. He had the magic of being able to build your political career from nothing. I mean, there's this young man, Samuel, who was just on the streets during the youth demonstrations. And for somehow he caught Baba's eye. And whatever he becomes in the future, for the period he was with Baba, Baba lifted him up somewhere. Baba had that ability of wanting, regardless whether he knew you in the past or not, to pick you up. So there would be a lot of competition going near Baba. I know many people in parliament who went into parliament simply because Baba took them in. Baba actually had that character of being selfless and actually even tribeless. because Baba helped people from across different places. People like Ali Hassan Joho would never be who they are without Baba. So Baba did have that attraction, and people were drawn to him. And I'm not acknowledging all that about Baba. I'm only saying that that's not what attracted Ruto to Baba. Ruto and Baba were brought together by circumstances that were forced by the youth of Kenya, say no to the Finance Bill 2024 and the country becoming ungovernable. There were political reasons that brought them together. Those political reasons were good and were solid as long as Baba lived. But as long as Baba is no more, nobody has a stature, experience, and in fact, who can hold Ruto to account the way Baba can to make it work. And therefore, those who are now there are beggars. They are not equal. You know, walikuwa wanasimama bega kwa bega. They stood shoulder to shoulder with Ruto and Raila. Now the others are employees, and they are meager to what Raila was. And by definition, their boss is William Samoei Ruto. And on this other side is a united opposition. A united opposition that is growing, that actually is beginning to impress me by their selflessness. I see now a two teams for 2 term, one led by Sifuna, one led by the Kalonzo group and elsewhere, and they are both in 1 term. And one can see somewhere in the future, if these 2 teams come together, they would become a force that would actually dominate the 2027 general election. And so to me, if I was seated where ODM is, and I'm seated with William Ruto, and watching these 2 other groups of 2 term emerge, I'll be a worried man, I'll be a concerned man. And particularly because of some of the reasons we are discussing today, which means lack of financial propriety, the lack of money in the exchequer. In fact, one of the reasons I'm here is because, you know, Safaricom is at the height of the Kenyan public discussion. And Safaricom is such a dear company to this country that this government has offered it to sell to Vodacom of the UK for over 200 billion shillings. And the government is engaging in what they are calling a public participation in a way to try and get an endorsement to go ahead with this transaction out of the law. You know, the Safaricom company sale is very suspicious. It was single-sourced, meaning no other person was aware that it was going to be sold. The company has been grossly undervalued. There's one thing about Safaricom that is even the most worrisome of all, is the M-Pesa component of Safaricom. You know, when Safaricom was, first of all, licensed in Kenya, it was seen simply as a communication to like telecom and other competitors of its time, and because of that, people rushed. There was a competitor by then called Kensel, and so on and so on. And then somewhere in the development of Safaricom, they came up with a product called M-Pesa. It was during the time of Michael Joseph, and they launched this thing called M-Pesa. It was lauded as a Kenyan achievement that has never been seen before, and so on. And we can look at Safaricom today in 2 elements. We look at the telecommunication, the internet, and all those things that it provides. But I think we need a special look at what is the value of Safaricom of M-Pesa in Safaricom. Now, last year, Safaricom did over 32 trillion. Over 32 trillion shillings were transacted into Safaricom by Kenyans across the board. The uptake of the use of Safaricom in Kenya is over 84%. The GDP contribution of M-Pesa to the Kenyan economy is 8.6%. You're talking about Safaricom becoming a critical player in terms of agents, the people who are using the Safaricom application to be paid for their businesses and so on, with till numbers, pay bill numbers, over 319,000. The people who are actually representatives who can give you money across the counter, so on, over 1 million people. The amount of Ruriza that was given to Kenyans last year by Safaricom was in excess of 829 billion, and money which is interest-free. You take it, you borrow it, and you return it as you use your phone. The security component that if I pay someone in Narok, that money has reached there, and I can be sure it has reached my mother. The fact that if your mother has no phone, they can go to an agent, and that agent can give them money because they can withdraw. All that has become part of the socio-economic life of Kenyans. To the extent that Safaricom has become more than a phone app, it has become a source of saving for Mshwari. It has become a global transmitter of money for global people abroad remitting money here. And when you are doing that also, you can build your house from London or Dallas without knowing you're being conned, because you can pay directly to a pay bill number.
Okay.
Knowing that your money is safe and so forth. You are also able to understand through M-Pesa that you are able to be accessible to financial services without a bank. Meaning long kilometers of walk from rural Kenya, where people could not otherwise sell avocado or their crops and be able to be paid, and when they reach town,
okay, so,
and so
yeah.
forth.
So where are we going with this, Tony?
So what I am saying is that when we look at Safaricom as proposed by the government, there is something about Safaricom that is beyond sale, which is what it means to Kenyans. And therefore to give it to a foreigner who will in effect have 55% holding of Kenya's biggest socio-economic unit, Safaricom, is unacceptable. So what has happened is Tony Gachoka has gone to court. I'm at the High Court. And this case is before Justice Lawrence Mugambi. And he directed 2 days ago that the case be mentioned on the 12th of March, because there were 2 other cases before Justice Mwita, who has now been upgraded to the Court of Appeal. So those other cases will be brought before the judge on 12, and they will be consolidated into one case before Justice Mugambi. And I was telling my lead counsel is Kalonzo Musyoka and Eugene Wamalwa that we all have to be in court on the 12th, because it's the first time and the only opportunity we have not only to consolidate this case, but also to seek for the empanelment of 3 judges, so that this can be heard by the Chief Justice can appoint a 3-bench judge to hear the importance of this case. And I want to tell Kenyans who are skeptical that this Tony Gachoka is the same one who stopped JKIA. And I went to court and I achieved it, and JKIA was cancelled. So this is the second public litigation I'm doing at this level. And I want to assure every Kenyan that I wouldn't say I'm going to court if I didn't think I would win. Now, yesterday I got the form of Safaricom because Vodacom had applied to us saying that they want to withdraw from the case, Vodacom International. And they were saying that they want to withdraw from the case because it's a local company, Vodacom Kenya, that is buying Safaricom, and they are not involved. So we've attached the documents of ownership where Vodacom International is actually the beneficial owner of Safaricom Kenya. So the affidavit which was filed in court seeking to pull out is only because the directors in the UK are aware of what happened with the IBC case versus Chicken Gate. In the IBC case involving Chicken Gate, UK directors were charged with fraud when they were made aware that there was a corrupt case in Kenya, and they did nothing to stop it. They were tried in the Crown Court in the UK and convicted, and they are still serving time. So we believe that the directors of Vodacom UK are trying to pull out of the case to leave it to be handled by local people, because they don't want ever to be accused of this issue.
Well, of course, because this is something that you believe. This is it's within your thought processes at this time.
We have an affidavit from Vodacom, which is part of the court record of them applying to leave. These are their words, not mine.
Okay. Now, linking all of this to what we're talking about in terms of why state share or government share value in listed companies will then be used to build and develop the country. This is where this is always coming from. That the government stake in this institution and this company then will be sold, or probably going to go ahead with it anyway, and that they will sell, that it is going towards ensuring that they can have some money in a fund that will go towards development infrastructure in the country. Do you have a problem with that?
Yes, I have, because it's completely unconstitutional and illegal.
How so?
The way in which public finances are raised are through the consolidated fund. The Treasury creates a budget. A budget is sent to the public for discussion and debate, and after debate from the public, it is presented as estimates to the National Assembly for passage and approval. The infrastructure bond, as proposed by William Ruto, is an illegal entity that seeks to seek money outside the consolidated fund and outside the rail guards of Parliament and scrutiny of the Attorney General and the controller of budget. The whole idea is that there is this fund run from State House that is collected from selling public assets and going not through the scrutiny of Parliament, but going directly to his, for the executive to decide what to do with it. Look, we have a situation where when funds come into the consolidated fund, they are constricted by several constitutional requirements. How much goes to the central government? How much goes to devolution? And of that goes to the central government, right? How much of it has been budgeted? And how much of it is within the budget? And it's also subject to the raising of taxes. Now, any attempt to raise money outside that process is unconstitutional and unconventional.
There's an attorney general who's legal counsel for government. There are institutions, and what you say, would they not know this, or would you say that there is an outright showing of impunity, because that's what we're talking about here?
In the Adani case, there was an attorney general, there was a parliament, there was a president, but Tony Gachoka still went to court. Well, what I'm trying to say, these people had signed. Adani was on the plane to Kenya. Adani, there was a red carpet. He was coming to take over the airport for 30 years. What are you talking about?
You might be surprised that on page 5...
The guy had gone with it.
That on page 5 of the Standard today, state eyeing fresh airport deal with Adani. Right? The government is mulling a fresh multi-million JKIA deal with Adani Group, even as a court heard on Tuesday that the previous contract had been officially cancelled.
By who? Who? And now, can you go to that article?
Well,
I can go to the same article.
The point being here...
No. You have made a public statement, which I want to contradict. There is a public in the same paper.
Tony,
yes.
I'm reading what the article says.
And I'm also reading...
My question to you, so let's focus on that, is... If we are saying that at that time there was an attorney general and it's coming back, because remember, the point of our conversation is to look at how public funds are being spent or being used, or how public infrastructure is then being developed. So here we are saying that there was an attorney general then and that case was stopped. It's coming back.
Yes,
and you're saying that we're going to court now to stop the Safaricom sale. My point is that what's to ensure that the institutions that are constitutionally established actually do their job when we see these things coming back?
Exactly. And what I am going to tell Kenyans today here at Spice FM is that in the same judgment, the judge declined. The judge declined to allow the government to go further in the New Deal, stating that it has given Tony Gachoka up to April the 26th to enter my reply. Tony Gachoka is here. So between Adani and William Ruto, they have to go through Tony Gachoka.
Okay.
Yeah, that is what I'm telling you. And it is clear, is it not there?
Yes, it is. It is.
Yeah, that I have been given, in fact, I was served yesterday, that I must give my submission as to why Adani case cannot go on at all. Yes, they have cancelled. That was part of my condition, that they must bring a letter showing the cancellation. But now they want to be free to go ahead. And the judge said, no, we cannot allow that until we hear on the responses of the petition. And the petitioner is Tony Gachoka, and he's here at Spice FM. This Wednesday morning.
So, Tony, one then asks the question, with all this Safaricom deal that is ongoing, right, and the sale of other public resources, one asks the question, at what point then does Mwananchi become center to these conversations? Because public participation is important. Kenyans are saying, even some of our listeners are asking the question, why wasn't this brought back to Kenyans to, one, first of all, be able to buy these shares? Second, be able to have their opinion on what needs to be done. A lot of these conversations that keep on happening happen at that macro level without involving the Mwananchi. Are Kenyans who own these resources, who own these assets, being put at the center of these conversations? And if not, Tony Gachoka, you as a complainant in court today, right? You are doing what many would say, unafanya kazi ya Mungu. But how can Kenyans plug into these conversations as well? So
do me a favor, read paragraph 1 and paragraph 7 of the affidavit of Vodacom International for the public.
Paragraph 1. I am the Group Chief Financial Officer for Vodacom Group Limited, the 7th respondent. I am conversant with facts relating to the petition dated 26 January 2026 and the notice of motion application dated 26 January 2026. That is the petitioner's application. I am duly authorized by the seventh respondent, and I am competent to swear this affidavit in support of the seventh respondent notice of motion dated 11th February 2026. That is the application.
Number 7.
When you go to the seventh, it says the seventh respondent is not a contracting party to the sale of Government of Kenya's shares in the sixth respondent of Government JKIA share sale, which transaction constitutes the primary issue in contention in this petition. The transaction is between Vodafone Kenya Limited, a separately legal entity, and the Government of Kenya. This information is in the public domain, having been disclosed through a notice issued by Safaricom PLC. The sixth respondent, see pages 5, Exhibit RM1, Safaricom notice of intention on the JKIA share sale.
So at the last paragraph, they want to be struck out, correct? Vodacom.
Yes.
Is that?
Yes.
Okay. This is the seat of government document on the ownership of who? Who owns what company is there? Vodacom Kenya?
Vodafone Kenya Limited.
Who are the owners of Vodacom Kenya?
Why is that?
Vodacom.com. On the column, on your column on your left. On the column.
Yes. Okay.
You can see who are the owners, 350 shares,
350 shares,
Vodacom.com, and so on.
Yes.
So you have in front of you a filed affidavit by Vodacom International at the High Court in Milimani asking to be pulled out of the case that I have instituted in the High Court on the basis that they are not involved. That is their affidavit of Vodacom. That I've given you is the ownership sheet of Safaricom. And I have said to you, why would the person buying a good company, buying it transparently, be scared and is pulling out? What are they pulling out from? And they are not cancelling the transaction. They are pulling out so they are not liable. What don't they want to be liable for? Because the company that is writing to the High Court an affidavit to withdraw from the Safaricom deal is Vodacom International. Their lawyers are there. That's an affidavit. It's a matter of the public record and the court record. And we are in shock because they are saying, no, it is being handled by Safaricom Kenya, Safaricom South Africa, and a Kenya company. As in UK, we don't know anything about it. And the company is a beneficial owner of everything is in the UK. And that is why we are telling Kenyans there is fraud in this matter. And that is why we are saying it is very suspicious for the buyer to want to pull out. Yesterday I read in the Standard, it was very well written, online version of the Standard, that people are pulling out. Why is Vodacom pulling out of the transaction? The affidavit is straight there. And my question to you is this. If the Vodacom transaction is not correct, why are we rushing into it? If Vodacom itself is saying we don't want to buy, why should a judicial process or a parliamentary process not look at it and say what is wrong with this? And the reason is because kama kuna kitu chini ya mkono, underhand deals, they don't want to be part of it. And that is why the directors of Vodacom have instructed their lawyers to make a rare demand for their name to be removed from a suit. In fact, they should be wanting to be in the suit to protect their investment. 240 billion shillings is not chicken change. How can they release their money be spent without them wanting oversight over their money? And I am raising the alarm very early on. Something here is very tricky. And that is why the government is trying to rush through this process by telling Kenyans it's already done, it's already done. Mimi nataka kuambia wananchi wa Kenya hivi. Safaricom ijeuzwa. Safaricom is in the time we can save it if we raise up as a nation and say no to it. What they are trying to do is get public participation. But even the owners who want to buy Vodacom are saying we are not part of that transaction. Let it be handled by the Kenyan group. And I am telling the judges, and this is self-suspicious, so we are asking on the 12th to get conservatory orders like we got in Jomo Kenyatta. So all the status quo is held until all this can be established. Who is buying? Who is responsible? What are the legal ramifications? What happens to M-Pesa? What happens to all and everything should be put right in front of the court. That is what we are demanding.
Who should answer these questions? Because we do remember remember that the CS Treasury, went, to different points and had conversations about the why. At the end of it, it looks great, right? That there's an infrastructure fund, and from the sale proceeds here of this partial divestiture, that you would then see that this infrastructure fund would then be beefed up, and then you could see Kenya develop at an amazing rate, right? So that end seems like the bright, shiny toy that you see, and that would then endear you to the idea because, okay, Kenya can be on the development path. What you're saying is that was the shroud for whatever else might be happening.
Yes, and I'm very lucky because I'm a veteran journalist. So part of my work is to investigate very deeply these things. And then, of course, I went to my party chairman. I went to Honorable Gideon Moi and my party. And I said, look, this thing is looking very, very bad. So I'm going to go to court, and I hope the party has no objection. So, yes, I went to court as Tony Gachoka as a journalist, but I also went as a spokesman of KANU. This issue we are raising is a very, very serious matter. It is just a matter of propriety. We are saying this deal has got some problems. And while we are inside the suit, the people who are opposing it is not even Safaricom. It's not even the government. It's Vodacom.
Yeah.
Vodacom are saying, hold on, pull us out of this. We don't want to be bound because the judgment of this thing, should it come negative to them, meaning there was no propriety or there was corruption or there was something, it would touch on those directors and they are personally responsible. And with the English, if you can see right now what's happening to Prince Andrew and the former ambassador to the US, Lord Madison, you can understand in England, laws come down to individuals when you commit crimes. So Vodacom better be very careful that everything here that has been done in their name is being done properly. Because should the Serious Crime Office in London find that they acted untowardly here, they have a problem because Vodacom is a traded company in the UK stock market and is subject to the capital markets there, it's subject to the Stock Exchange of London, matters which I'm very well aware. I was schooled in the UK, so I'm very, very aware of those records. We will, of course, be accessing the House of Commons in the UK. We are going to make this a matter in the public domain of the UK. If you remember with Adani, we also made it all the way to India and involved Rahul Gandhi and the Congress Party. We are going to make sure that the English press are able to get hold of this matter, that we are able to get the regulatory authorities in the London Stock Exchange. We are going to make sure that everybody in Vodacom knows what is being done. Because what we are saying is, how can you come and source singularly, make a price between two people? It's not even competitive. If I'm selling something which is good, I would want to have 3-4 other people saying, how am I reaching this value? There would need to be a conversation, not Kenyans being told it's already done, now just approve it. Done why? So the way in which this matter is being handled, the speed at which it's being raised, and the other conflicts of interest. The lawyer of Safaricom is the chairman of Central Bank of Kenya. The chairman of the Central Bank of Kenya is representing Safaricom in this case. The lawyer who is representing Vodacom has been a lawyer associated with this president, an Indian lawyer everybody knows, who is everywhere. He's the one representing that group. And so there are many questions. If legal fees are paid to one person, how are they distributed? These things deal with transaction advisors, they deal with lawyers. So it's not just corruption on the face of it. It's the kind of billions of shillings that are paid in fees. And so we must look at the propriety. We must make sure who are the transaction advisors in this transaction. Are they independent? Are they known? Who are the lawyers in these matters who are doing this thing? Are they known? Are they independent? Who are the deals, contractual deals? How was valuation reached? In our case, we have an expert. In fact, I brought in Nyakera, who used to work with JP Morgan. He's running for Nairobi as well. I brought him in. He used to be Citibank. I brought him in to bring in the valuation elements of this whole thing as a joiner in the case. Because we want us to look at it from a government point of view, having been the PS and so forth. We want to understand how the government reached this price of 200 billion and how they chose this particular one person. But beyond that, we are writing this afternoon to Vodacom CEO. I'm waiting for Kalonzo Musyoka to come back for me to have a press conference with him so that this matter can now be taken to the highest political level in Kenya. But we are telling William Ruto, you are not going to sell Safaricom. Safaricom ni yetu na tutakupeleka kotini. We are going to fight tooth and nail to ensure that this sale is stopped, and we will meet you in court on the 12th of March, and I'm coming there with the united opposition.
Tony Gachoka, he's a spokesman of the Kanu party and also have been here. We've looked at a lot of issues this morning. This is one to watch to essentially see what is going to happen. But Tony, thank you for being here this morning, and of course to then further engage you as things progress to see where this is going. It's a public issue, and it's one that does involve Kenyans to the bone, essentially. Thank you for being here.
Since I'm here, can I thank all of you and all your editorial team, the entire group. I find it fascinating to read The Standard every morning. You people are bold and you are doing more than we are doing. So congratulations and Hogera to the whole team.
TG, thank you very much for being here. Good morning, everybody. It's 9 a.m.
The latest news from this is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.